next item of business is topical questions, and at question number 1 I call Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is preparing for winter in light of widespread weather-related disruption over the weekend due to Storm Bert.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The Scottish Government has well-established and tested processes for preparing for winter weather. Our Central Resilience Operation can be activated in advance of severe weather and ensures ministers are kept fully updated on any developing issues. Officials work year-round with key partners, including the Blue Light Services, councils, health boards, transport operators, the voluntary sector and others to support shared understanding of risks, plans and processes. We stand ready to support our partners through the coming winter, and through our Ready Scotland channels will continue to provide public advice on preparing for and responding to a wide range of emergencies. On roads preparation, I launched the Transport Scotland Trunk Road Winter Service 24-25 at the Traffic Scotland National Control Centre, South Queensferry, on November the 6th, 2024, where I was able to confirm that we have more grit on stock than was used in the entirety of last year's winter, and we have over 240 gritters to undertake enhanced patrols of the trunk road network, spreading salt and ploughing snow from over 40 depots across Scotland. The winter fleet has now been refreshed, with new vehicles replacing older ones to improve performance and reliability.
Sue Webber.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Storm Bert caused chaos across Scotland this weekend, with ScotRail and CalMac both announcing cancellations, while motorists were stranded and the Queensferry crossing was closed. One of my constituents who was stuck on the M8 for hours said that it was only after 2 hours that he saw a police car and people were cutting into the hard shoulder, and the situation was dangerous for emergency vehicles. The impact of the storm was severe, but it wasn't unexpected. People, as is now well established, will still travel despite the issuing of weather warnings, and it seems the authorities had no idea how they all got caught out. What actions is the Cabinet Secretary taken to future-proof our transport network from future extreme weather events?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I would say that in terms of the response, our railways responded with their emergency planning set up in advance. The multi-response unit also brought everyone together in time. In terms of the weather forecast, I think there are 2 points I'd want to make. One, I think there's a serious issue with 12 named storms last year, how we can help convince people when the police say do not travel this weekend, that they respond to that appropriately. I also think there has to be a better understanding between what is a yellow weather warning, which still caused disruption, and it warns people there will be disruptions, and that was the case for Lothians. But because I was very close to the M8 and Junction 3 where the issues were, the snow came down extremely quickly at that point. And although the southern uplands had been subject later on to an amber warning, as was the north, the Lothians were not. So there's certainly lessons to be learned, probably from the Met warning aspects of that, which will be communicated more widely. But I will emphasise we were prepared. But if you have multiple weather warnings, we didn't just have one. We had rain, we had wind, we had ice, and we had snow. And the combination of that was obviously going to cause disruption, and that's what obviously happened. It was mitigated and responded to appropriately, and indeed making sure that our roads could then be travelled upon, and also our services both on the ferry and the railway are resumed. But safety must always be the priority.
Webber.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that detailed answer. But fostering resilience is essential to ensuring that Scotland is protected for future extreme weather events. Edinburgh city centre was gridlocked when the snow hit on Saturday, with buses cancelled and drivers left stranded with no gritters in sight. What makes this worse is that Transport Scotland has spent nothing on road grit for the past 3 financial years, despite the Cabinet Secretary saying there's more grit in stock than was used in the entirety of last winter. Roads must be properly protected against these icy conditions that are all too familiar to those who travel on roads in Scotland. You say the Transport Scotland say they have adequate levels of grit, but there's no point in having stockpiles if it's not going to be used. And this is cold comfort for those people who were stranded due to the closures that affected our major trunk roads. Does the Cabinet Secretary not accept that this looks like another example of where the SNP government has failed to deliver value for taxpayers, leaving motorists stranded with this weather hits?
We do have interest in this item, and I would be grateful if we could keep questions and responses as concise as possible.
412 tonnes of grit was available. Transport Scotland procure trunk road maintenance, which I would remind the member is actually 31% up this year. We do that by working with operating companies. Can I politely point out to Ms Webber that actually outside this chamber, our Amy, one of the operators who staff diligently worked to help ensure that our roads were made open. They are the ones that have and procure the majority of the salt that's required. I'm sure they will explain that to her if she wants to spend time with them this afternoon. And as regards Edinburgh City Council, as a former councillor, I'm sure Sue Webber knows that Transport Scotland are not responsible for the Edinburgh City Council roads, but Edinburgh City Council are responsible for Edinburgh City Council roads.
Call Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's good to hear from the Cabinet Secretary that our grit stores are high. The Tories seem to think that the Scottish Government should be spending more money on grit even when we don't need it, which is par for the course given their track record on budgeting. But can the Cabinet Secretary assure that we would be able to purchase more grit if needed and that mechanisms are in place to do so?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think serious misrepresentation of grit stocks is something that anybody with a responsibility would obviously question. And I think a common sense approach would have actually been to look beyond the headlines to identify what are strategic stocks and what are stocks of grit that are used by the maintenance companies that look after our trunk roads. National strategic salt stocks of 71,000 tonnes are currently at stock in various depots throughout Scotland, and procurement mechanisms are available to increase this provision if necessary. Clearly, we keep the stock levels under review and budget every year to ensure there is funding there to support winter resilience on our roads should it be needed.
Blair Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Queensferry crossing was closed for more than 15 hours because of the risk of falling ice, and the risk was very real for one driver whose windscreen was cracked. This was the fourth closure since 2017. It is welcome the fourth bridge was opened to all passengers within 25 minutes. But does the Cabinet Secretary anticipate any solution to this, given that previous attempts to resolve this issue have failed?
Cabinet Secretary.
So there have been 3 occasions since opening in August 2017 that there have been ice accretions incidents. Where there is a risk of falling ice, which is serious, a 6-point plan is implemented by our operating company, Bear Scotland. The plan includes enhanced patrols, heightened focus on prevailing weather conditions, increased data and intelligence gathering, pre-laying of traffic management and enhanced stakeholder communications. When ice accretion conditions are forecast as high or severe, patrols are implemented to check the ice formation and inform decisions on the diversion over the Forth Road Bridge, which was subject to a trial just earlier this month, was enacted in about 26 minutes to ensure that traffic could keep flowing. It is a serious issue for bridges across the world, not just ourselves. Indeed, the Orison Bridge and the Strawbelt Bridge also are subject to ice accretion, and they close when that happens. So she raises a very important point. I will remain vigilant, but safety is always first.
Thank you. A very brief supplementary. Emma Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First, we had a lot of snow and then a storm affecting the islands and north of Scotland, with everyone in Scotland getting a share of the snow and wind over the weekend. It's important not to forget that every extreme weather event means there are people we rely upon in public and voluntary services putting themselves out there in hazardous and challenging conditions to keep us safe. Will the Cabinet Secretary join me in thanking everyone involved in national and local resilience efforts over these last 10 days?
Secretary.
Yes, I will. Resilience is about the planning in advance, but obviously the delivery when incidents happen. I had the opportunity in November, when we launched our winter service, to thank those that were in attendance. That includes our trunk road operating companies, our Transport Scotland officials, our contract providers, Police Scotland, Traffic Scotland, the Met and media partners. I think it's important that we all work together on that resilience. I'd like to thank all of those that were involved over the weekend, and obviously with the winter to come, we have yet more to do, and I would encourage people to talk to our Amy colleagues outside the chamber, who will probably be able to give you a more in-depth analysis of the hazardous and challenging conditions that they and their operators and others conduct to keep our transport system and our transport network open and safe.
Thank you. Question number 2, Keith Brown.
To ask the Scottish Government regarding any impact on fuel poverty in Scotland what its response is to the reported announcement that the energy price cap will increase by a further 1.2% for the period covering January to March 2025.
Minister Alistair Allen.
Our analysis suggests that under the latest energy price cap, around 830,000 households will be in fuel poverty. That is 33% of all households. This represents a slight increase of less than 10,000 households from the previous price cap period. All of that said, I know many households will be feeling the financial strain as energy prices remain high. The Scottish Government is working with industry and others to design a social tariff mechanism to ensure protection for energy consumers. However, it is the UK Government that has the fundamental levers over energy pricing and obligations to fully address the cost pressures on households and, indeed, ultimately the power to enact a social tariff.
Keith Brown.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? Does he share my concerns that, despite Scotland being an energy-rich country, households here face higher energy costs than many European counterparts, a situation worsened by Labour's failure to deliver on its manifesto pledge to cut energy bills by £300 per annum, and, of course, its decision to cut the winter fuel payment?
Minister.
Well, as the member rightly says, the decision to cut winter fuel payment has meant a reduction in the block grant adjustment to deliver our intended universal pension age winter heating payment by £147 million in 24-25, over 80% of the forecasted cost. This now means around 900,000 pensioners will not receive support this winter, including many who are eligible for pension credit but have not yet applied. We cannot continue to be expected to mitigate from our devolved budget the results of UK Government cuts. What is really needed is reform of the UK energy markets to rectify the root causes of fuel poverty in Scotland, such as unfair standing charges and high fuel prices.
Mr Brown.
Yesterday we had the Labour Party calling for a vote on reinstating the winter fuel payment after previously voting against an SNP motion to do just that, claiming, of course, to stand up for pensioners when they've already betrayed them and proven they can't be trusted. Does the Minister agree that this nauseating hypocrisy from the Labour Party, particularly when they promised to lower energy bills but instead have overseen a £150 increase so far, with further rises expected in January, leaving millions of households worse off, with Scotland once again being hardest hit? And has the Minister had any more success than I have had when I've asked Anis Sarwar as to how many people in Scotland, according to Labour's own research, will die as a result of Labour's energy hike prices?
Minister, on matters for which the Government has responsibility.
Well, on these matters, it's welcome that the Scottish Labour are now, eventually it seems, joining with the rest of this chamber in our condemnation of the actions of the UK Labour Government in cutting the winter fuel payment. But it does leave us in the amazing position, as the member has alluded to, where Labour in Scotland are seeking for protection from the actions of their own party. And the question is, what has changed for Labour in the week since they whipped their MSPs to vote to support the UK Government's actions in cutting the winter fuel payment? As temperatures fell in Scotland this week, it's clear that Scottish Labour finally realised the damage that their policy of cutting winter fuel payments would do. But even in their repentance, they seem to have fallen short of advocating for the return of a universal winter payment. We in the Scottish Government will continue to do what we can, within the limited powers of this Parliament, to argue for reform of the energy market and continue to press the UK Government for the introduction of a social tariff mechanism.
Paul Keane.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The Minister said that the Government will continue to do what it can, but the fact is it's not doing what it can because we have £41 million of consequentials from the UK Household Support Fund. Not a word from the Government about what they're going to do with that money. I've asked the Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice on several occasions to outline we have offered a basket of measures that could be used to support people this winter. That money has also been expended for a further year, so £41 million next year as well. So isn't it about time, given that other devolved administrations have said what they're going to do with that money, that the Cabinet Secretary explained what that money will be used for, or has it fallen into the Government's black hole?
Minister.
Well, I'm not sure if the member was listening, but the UK Government's approach reduces the block grant adjustment of the UK's winter fuel payment by £147 million in 2024-25, which is over 80% of the cost of the intended universal benefit. Now, we will work with the UK Government. We work with them on a whole range of fronts around fuel poverty and around energy. And we have committed to keeping eligibility under review, and ministers and officials are working at pace on options for investing any consequentials as a result of the Household Support Fund. But this does not take away from the fact that energy bills have gone up by £150 as the consequences of a UK Government who promised to bring them down by £300.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions. And before we move on to the next item of business, which is a committee of the whole Parliament, I suspend this meeting of Parliament.